The Great Hall of Confluence Prime was the largest room ever built by any species in the galaxy. It floated in orbit around a dead star far from any world, a place where all species could meet as equals. The circular table at its center had 400 seats, and every seat belonged to a different species. Every seat except one, the empty chair, had a small sign in front of it. The sign said, Earth, in 12 different languages. Ambassador Yevil of the Veil Hegemony looked at that empty chair and felt his stomach turn with annoyance. This was the 47th Galactic Coordination Summit. Earth had been invited to every single one. Earth had never come. Yethel was tall and thin with purple skin and 6 fingers on each hand. His species, the Veil, were the oldest and most powerful civilization in this part of the galaxy. They had 12,000 warships. They had colonized 300 worlds. They had guided younger species into the galactic community for 10,000 years, and they could not understand why one small species on one small planet refused to join them. The humans send their regrets, announced the secretary of the summit, a small creature with too many eyes. Their message is the same as always. Yevthal had memorized that message by now. It never changed. Humanity thanks the Council for its invitation and wishes all species prosperity. We will not be attending. No explanation, no demands, no anger, just polite refusal. Again and again for almost 200 years, the Keth very high drone clicked her sharp mouth parts together. She was an insect as large as a ground vehicle with a shell that shined like black metal. Her species controlled 8,000 warships and ruled over 40 worlds. Perhaps we should stop inviting them, she said. They clearly do not want our friendship. They are afraid, said High Commander Sothrin of the Veil military. He was younger than Yevthal and less patient. We have watched their planet for 2 centuries. They have no fleet, a few satellites around their world, some cargo ships that move between their planet and their moon, nothing more. They are children pretending to be adults. A Surin delegate made a sound like breaking glass. The Sonurans were made of living crystal, and they spoke by vibrating their bodies. Children do not refuse invitations from their elders. There is something strange about the humans. What is strange, Surin said, is their stupidity. The devourer swarms have destroyed 100 civilizations. When the devourers come for Earth, the humans will scream for our help, and we will remind them of all the summits they ignored. The summit continued. There was much to discuss. Trade routes needed protection, border disputes needed resolution, and always there was the devourer threat. The devourers were not like other species. They did not build cities or write poetry or dream of the future. They were hunger given form. They traveled in massive living ships made of flesh and bone, and they consumed everything in their path. Planets, moons, stars themselves. The last devourer war had killed 340 billion people across 50 worlds. That war had ended 80 years ago. The devourers had retreated to the dark spaces between galaxies, but everyone knew they would return. They always returned. Our scouts report movement. Sector 12, said a military advisor. The devourer swarms may be waking. Fear passed through the chamber like a cold wind. Even the mightiest species feared the devourers. The insect Kethvari, who knew no fear in battle, grew quiet. Proud Veil looked at each other with Worried eyes, we must strengthen our alliances, Yevthal said, we must prepare our fleets, together we survived the last war, together we will survive the next. The summit ended 3 days later. Agreements were signed, promises were made, ships would be built, soldiers would be trained, the galaxy would stand together against the coming darkness. As the delegates left Confluence Prime, Ambassador Yevthal took one last look at the empty human chair, such a small species, such a young world. He felt something close to pity. When the devourers came, Earth would be alone. Earth would burn, and the galaxy would barely notice. He turned away and walked to his ship, already forgetting about the primitive creatures on their primitive planet. He did not know that far away, in the cold darkness beyond the edge of Earth's solar system, something was happening, something that would change everything. The Kuiper Belt was a ring of ice and rock that circled the sun at a great distance. It was cold. There, cold beyond imagination. The sun was just a bright star in the sky, giving no warmth, no comfort. Nothing lived there. Nothing could live there. At least that was what the galaxy believed. Deep in that frozen darkness, hidden behind asteroids the size of mountains, a light blinked on. Then another, then 1,000 more. Engines that had slept for decades began to wake. Metal groaned as massive structures stirred to life in a control room that no alien had ever seen. A human woman looked at her screens. She was old, with gray hair and tired eyes. She had given her whole life to this moment. Her mother had given her life. Her grandmother had given her life. 3 generations of secrets, 3 generations of sacrifice, all leading to this day. The message from Earth Command was simple: the devourers have changed course. They are coming for Sol System. Wake the fleet. The woman smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had waited too long for a fight that was finally coming. She pressed a button and spoke into a microphone. Her voice traveled through cables and radio waves, reaching every hidden station in the Kuiper Belt. This is Admiral Chen. All stations, all ships, begin activation sequence. Today we stop hiding. Today we show the galaxy what humanity has been doing for the last 200 years. In the darkness, lights continue to appear, hundreds of them, thousands of them, ships that should not exist, ships that no one knew about, ships that humanity had built in secret while the galaxy laughed at their empty chair. 2,000 warships, each one a mountain of metal and fire, each one carrying weapons that the galaxy had never imagined. For 2 centuries, humanity had listened, they had watched, they had learned, they had taken every piece of alien technology they could find and made it better, faster, stronger, more deadly. The galaxy thought humans were afraid. The galaxy was wrong. Humans were not afraid. Humans were patient, and now finally, their patience was about to pay off. Admiral Chen watched as her fleet came alive around her. 2,000 ships, 50 million sailors, the greatest military force humanity had ever built, hidden in the cold dark where no one thought to look. She thought about the empty chair at Confluence Prime. She thought about all the invitations humanity had refused. She thought about the Veil and the Keth and all the other species who had called her people primitive. Soon, she thought, soon they would understand. Soon everyone would understand. General Miriam Makono stood in a room that did not officially exist. The walls were covered with photographs and names. 2,847 names in total. These were the people who had built humanity's secret. These were the people who had lived in the cold darkness of the outer solar system, working in hidden shipyards, never telling their families what they really did. Many of them had died out there, alone and unknown, and their bodies had been buried in ice. Akono touched one of the photographs. It showed a young man with a bright smile. Her grandfather, he had been an engineer on the first shipyard back when the whole project was just a dream and a prayer. He had died 40 years before the first warship was completed. He never saw what his work had built. They would be proud, said a voice behind her. Akono turned. Secretary General David Park stood in the doorway. He was the leader of Earth's government, though few people on Earth knew about the real decisions he made. The public saw him give speeches about peace and cooperation. They did not know about the fleets hidden in the dark. The devourers changed course. Yesterday, Park said, they're not heading for Valeth space anymore. They're coming straight for us. I know, Akono said. I gave the wake-up order 6 hours ago. Park walked to the wall of names and stood beside her. Do you think they knew? The devourers, I mean, do you think they somehow figured out what we've been building? Akono shook her head. No, our security has been perfect. Not one leak in 200 years. The devourers are coming here because they think we're easy prey. They think we're weak, and instead they'll find the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Yes. Park was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had haunted Earth's leaders for generations. Do you ever wonder if we made the right choice? All those years of hiding, all those lives spent in secret. Akono had asked herself that question many times. She knew the history by heart. She knew why humanity had chosen silence. It began 200 years ago when the Veil first made contact with Earth. The aliens had come in peace. They brought gifts of knowledge and technology. They showed humanity the stars and all the wonders they contained. They invited Earth to join the Galactic Council, and they gave humanity star charts. Those charts showed everything, every species, every empire, every military fleet. The Veil were proud of their 12,000 warships. They wanted the young humans to be impressed. They wanted humanity to understand how small they were. Earth's leaders had smiled and said, thank you. They had pretended to be impressed, and then they had retreated behind closed doors and talked for 3 days without sleep. The star charts told them everything they needed to know. The galaxy was dangerous. The major powers were always fighting each other, forming alliances and breaking them, stealing territory and losing it. And behind all of that, the devourer threat hung like a dark cloud. Every few centuries, the devourers would wake up and consume dozens of worlds before they could be pushed back. The Council's solution was simple: stick together, share resources, build collective defenses, safety, and numbers. Earth's leaders saw it differently. If you joined the herd, you died with the herd. That was what the first UNESC director had written. If you showed your strength, you became a target. Every species in the galaxy was watching every other species, looking for weakness, looking for advantage. And young species like humanity would be used, manipulated, sacrificed when convenient. But if you stayed silent, you might survive. If you built in the Dark where no one thought to look, you might become strong enough to protect yourself, strong enough that no one would ever threaten you again. Doctrine of silence was born that day. Humanity would smile at the galaxy. Humanity would be polite and friendly, and completely uninteresting, and in the frozen darkness at the edge of the solar system humanity would build the first shipyard was finished 20 years after first contact. It was small and crude, hidden behind a mountain of ice in the Kuiper Belt. The workers lived in tiny rooms with no windows. They saw their families once a year. If they were lucky, many of them never came home at all, but they built year after year. Decade after decade they built. The alien technology was not hard to steal. The Veil and the other species were careless with their secrets. They broadcast research papers and technical specifications openly, never imagining that the primitive humans were listening. They held military demonstrations and trade shows, never noticing the human observers who memorized every detail. Earth scientists took that stolen knowledge and made it better. They found weaknesses in Valith weapons and designed armor that could stop them. They studied Kethri engine and built faster ones. They looked at everything the galaxy had created and asked one simple question: how can we improve this? Generation after generation, the work continued. Children grew up knowing they would spend their lives in secret. Parents said goodbye to sons and daughters who would never come home. The wall of names grew longer every year, and the fleet grew larger. By the time the Devourers changed course toward Earth, humanity had 2,000 warships waiting in the dark. Each one was a masterpiece of stolen and improved technology. Each one could fight 10 enemy ships at once and win. General Akono looked at the wall of names one last time. They gave everything for this moment, she said. We won't waste their sacrifice. The council still doesn't know, Park said. They're probably writing our obituary right now. Poor primitive humans about to be eaten by the Devourers. Akono smiled. It was the same cold smile that Admiral Chin had shown in the Kuiper Belt. Let them think that. Let them believe we're helpless. It will make the surprise even better. And after, when the Devourers are destroyed and the galaxy knows what we've built, after that we attend the summit. We sit in that empty chair and we explain to the council that the universe has changed. Park nodded. Slowly. They won't be happy. They'll be afraid of us. Good, Akono said. Fear keeps people honest, and when the next threat comes, and there will always be a next threat, they'll be glad we were here. She walked to the door and paused. 200 years of silence ends tonight. Secretary General, tell our people to be ready. Tell them their ancestors are watching. Tell them to make humanity proud. Park looked at the wall of names. All those faces, all those sacrifices, all those secrets kept for so long, about to be revealed. May God help us, he whispered, but he knew that God had very little to do with it. What came next was the work of human hands, human minds, and human will. What came next was the result of 200 years of patience and planning. The Devourers were coming, and humanity was ready. The Devourer fleet entered the Sol system like a wave of nightmares. 900 bioships, each one a living mountain of flesh and hunger, each one carrying millions of soldier creatures ready to consume everything they touched. They moved past the outer planets without slowing down. Jupiter meant nothing to them. Saturn was just a pretty ball in the void. They had smelled Earth from across the stars, and they were hungry on Confluence Prime. The Galactic Council watched through their long-range sensors. Ambassador Ivil felt something close to sadness as he observed the human system. He had tried to warn them for 200 years. He had tried to bring them into the galactic family. Now it was too late. 900 Devourer ships, said High Commander Sothran. His voice was flat and cold. The humans have perhaps 50 defensive satellites. This will not take long. The Keth Very High drone made a clicking sound that meant agreement. Waste. They were a curious species. We could have protected them. They chose isolation. Surin said now they will pay the price. Around the council table, delegates from a dozen species watched the censors. Some felt pity, some felt anger, a few felt secret satisfaction. The arrogant humans who had refused every invitation would finally learn humility. Unfortunately, they would not survive the lesson. The Devourers reached Earth's orbit in 3 hours. They ignored the defensive satellites completely. Their bioships were covered in thick organic armor that could shrug off any weapon the humans possessed, or so they believed. On Earth, people looked up at the sky and prayed. They did not know about the hidden fleet. They did not know about the 200 years of secrets. They only knew that monsters had come to eat their world, and there was nothing they could do. Then the sky changed. From behind Neptune, from the shadows of Uranus, from the frozen darkness of the Kuiper Belt, lights began to appear. Thousands of lights, engine fires burning blue and white against the black of space, ships emerging from hiding places where no one had thought to look. 2,000 warships, each one painted black, invisible against the void, each one carrying weapons that no species in the galaxy had ever seen. On the bridge of the UN's Silent Fury, Admiral Chen watched her fleet take formation. The old woman who had waited so long for this moment felt tears on her cheeks, not from fear, from pride, from the knowledge that her grandmother's sacrifice, her mother's sacrifice, her own sacrifice had all been worth it. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, she said into her communicator. The enemy is before us. They think we are weak. They think we are prey. Today we teach them the truth. Today we show the galaxy what humanity can do. All ships engage. 2,000 warships surged forward on Confluence Prime. Ambassador Ivthal's purple skin turned white. His hands trembled as he stared at his sensors. The readings made no sense. They were impossible. Humans did not have a fleet. Humans could not have a fleet, and yet there they were, 2,000 ships of war appearing from nowhere like ghosts from the deep. What is this? The Keth Very High drone demanded. Where did those ships come from? No one answered. No one could answer. They could only watch. The first human weapons fired. They were not like anything the Devourers had faced before. Humanity had spent 2 centuries studying alien technology and improving it. They had designed these weapons specifically to kill biohips. Beams of focused energy cut through organic armor like knives. Through paper, missiles carrying engineered viruses burrowed into Devourer flesh and turned it to liquid. The Devourers screamed. Their screams traveled through space on radio waves. Horrible sounds of pain and confusion. They had destroyed 100 civilizations. They had consumed 1,000 worlds. Nothing had ever hurt them like this. They tried to fight Back, their bioships launched swarms of smaller creatures, living weapons that could tear through metal, but human ships were faster, human shields were stronger, human guns never stopped firing. In the first hour, humanity destroyed 300 Devourer ships. Admiral Chen moved through the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra. She had studied the Devourers for her entire career. She knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their fears. She knew exactly where to strike and when. Squadron 7, target their command creature. Squadron 12, cut off their retreat, leave none alive. The galaxy must see that Earth does not show mercy. The Devourers tried to run. For the first time in galactic memory, Devourers tried to flee from a battle, but the human fleet was everywhere. Every escape route was blocked. Every hiding place was exposed. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it was over, 900 Devourer bioships had been reduced to drifting meat and bone. The space around Earth was filled with the bodies of dead monsters. On the planet below, people came out of their shelters and looked up at a sky full of strange lights. They did not understand what had happened. They only knew that the monsters were gone. Humanity had lost 12 ships, 12 out of 2,000, less than 1%. Admiral Chen opened a channel. Not to Earth, not to her fleet, to the galaxy. She knew that every species with a receiver would hear her words. She wanted them to hear. This is Earth, she said. Her voice was calm and steady. We apologize for the delay. We were busy. The Devourer threat to Sol System has been neutralized. We will now be attending the next summit. We have concerns to discuss on Confluence Prime. The council chamber was silent. Ambassador Ivthal sat frozen in his chair, unable to move, unable to think. Everything he knew about humans was wrong. Everything the galaxy knew about humans was wrong. High Commander Soren found his voice first. 2,000 ships. They had 2,000 ships and we never knew. How is this possible? The Keth very hid. Drone's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. They listened to us. For 200 years, they listened and learned and built while we called them primitive. They were becoming stronger than any of us. They lied to us, Soren said. They deceived the entire galaxy. No, Ambassador Yevthal said slowly. His voice was quiet and full of shame. We deceived ourselves. We saw what we wanted to see. A small species, a young world, easy prey. He looked at the sensor readings at the debris field that had once been 900 Devourer bioships. We were fools on Earth. General Okonkwo stood in her command center and watched the celebration on the streets below. People were dancing, people were crying, people were hugging strangers and singing songs of victory. They still did not fully understand what had happened. They did not know about the hidden fleet or the 200 years of secrets, but they knew that humanity had survived. They knew that the monsters were dead, and for now that was enough. Secretary General Park appeared on her screen. It's done, he said. The Devourers are destroyed. The galaxy knows about our fleet. Yes, Akono said. And now comes the hard part, the summit. The summit, the explanations, the anger, the fear. She smiled grimly. They're not going to be happy with us. No, Park agreed, but they're going to need us. The Devourer swarms are not finished. There are more out there somewhere in the dark. And now the galaxy knows that humanity is the only species that can stop them. Akono looked out at the celebrating crowds. So many lives saved. So many sacrifices justified, but the work was not finished. It was only beginning. Prepare my ship, she said. It's time to attend our first summit. The human delegation arrived at Confluence Prime in a ship that made the station's guards very nervous. The UNS Harbinger was not as large as the warships that had destroyed the Devour fleet, but it was clearly built for battle. Its black hole absorbed light like a hole in space. Its weapons were visible and numerous. It docked at the station gently, almost politely, but everyone who watched it knew that politeness was a choice, not a necessity. General Miriam Akono walked off the ship first. She was wearing her military uniform, not diplomatic clothes. Behind her came admirals and scientists and military advisors. At the back of the group walked a small, quiet woman with gray-streaked hair. This was Secretary General Ada Uramensa, the leader of Earth's government. She had replaced David Park just 6 months ago. After his retirement, she was new to the job, but she was not new to the secret. The great chamber of the Galactic Council felt different today. The delegates sat stiffly in their chairs. Their guards stood closer than usual. The air itself seemed heavy with fear and anger. General Akono led the human delegation to their seat, the empty chair. For the first time in almost 200 years, a human sat in that chair. Every eye in the chamber watched as Secretary General Mensa took her place at the table. High Commander Sothran of the Valeth stood immediately. His purple skin was flushed with rage. You deceived us, he shouted. For 2 centuries, you made us believe you were nothing. You spied on us. You stole our technology. You pretended to be weak while building an army in the shadows. Mensa looked at him calmly. We made you believe nothing, she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. You assumed. You saw what you expected to see. Primitive species, isolationists, cowards. She folded her hands on the table. We were none of those things. We were simply patient. The Kethvari hid. Drone leaned forward, her compound eyes glittering with angry light. Your fleet, your weapons, you reverse-engineered our technology. You stole secrets from every species in this chamber. Yours, the Vales, the Sonurans, everyone's. Mensa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You broadcast your technical specifications quite openly. Trade agreements, research papers, military demonstrations. We listened, we learned, we improved. Ambassador Yevthal spoke. For the first time, his voice was old and tired. How long have you been building? From the beginning, from the moment you handed us those star charts and showed us how small we were. In your eyes, the chamber exploded with noise. Delegates shouted accusations. Military officers made threats. The Veil demanded that humanity disarm. Immediately, the HFY insisted that Earth pay reparations for stolen technology. A dozen species called for sanctions, blockades, even war. Through it all, the human delegation sat quietly. They did not argue. They did not defend themselves. They simply waited. Finally, General Akono stood. She raised one hand, and somehow that simple gesture silenced the room. Perhaps it was her reputation. Perhaps it was the memory of what her fleet had done to the Devourers. Perhaps it was simply the look in her eyes. The Devourer swarms are not defeated, she said. We destroyed one fleet, one. Our intelligence suggests there are dozens more scattered across the galaxy. They will return. They will be angry, and They will be prepared, the shouting. Stopped, fear replaced anger on many. Faces, you can threaten us, Akono. Continued, you can sanction us. You can try to take our ships by force, though. Would strongly advise against that. Her voice hardened, or you can accept what should have been obvious from the start. And what is that? Soren demanded, though his voice had lost its fury. Akono's eyes swept across the chamber, meeting every alien gaze. You needed us more than we needed you, and now you need us more than ever. The silence that followed was complete. No one moved, no one spoke. The truth of her words hung in the air like smoke. Secretary General Mensa stood beside her. General, we did not build our fleet to threaten you. We built it to survive. The galaxy is dangerous. You know this better than anyone. The devourers, the border wars, the betrayals and broken treaties. We watched all of it. We learned from all of it. She walked slowly around the table, looking at each delegate in turn. You called us primitive. You laughed at our empty chair. You assumed that our silence meant weakness, but silence can mean many things. Sometimes it means fear, sometimes it means ignorance. She stopped and faced the chamber, and sometimes it means patience. Ambassador Ithil spoke again. His voice was barely above a whisper. What do you want from us? Our alliance, Mensa said simply. Real alliance, not the kind where you protect us like children, the kind where we fight together as equals. The devourers are coming back next time. There might be thousands of bioships, not hundreds. Next time they might attack your worlds, not ours, and you would help us. The Keth very high drone asked. There was surprise in her voice. After we ignored you, after we called you weak, we would help you. Mensa confirmed, because that is what good neighbors do, and because a galaxy full of dead civilizations would have no one left to trade with, argue with, or learn from. General Akono stepped forward. Again, let me be clear about something. We are not asking for permission. We are not apologizing for what we built. Our fleet exists. Our technology exists. You cannot change that. The only question is whether we use it alone or together. Sothran's face twisted with frustration. You cannot just walk in here and demand alliance. You lied to us for 200 years. We survived for 200 years. Akon corrected. There is a difference, and we did not lie. We never claimed to be weak. We never claimed to be harmless. You made those assumptions on your own. We simply did not correct you. The Sonoran delegate made a sound like chimes in wind. You could have told us. You could have joined us. We would have welcomed your strength. Mensa shook her head. Would you? A young species with powerful technology. How long before someone decided we were a threat? How long before our ships were stolen, our scientists kidnapped, our world destroyed to eliminate a rival? She returned to her seat. We saw how this galaxy works. We decided to survive on our own terms. Ambassador Yevil closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was something like respect in his ancient face. You were right to hide, he admitted. If we had known about your fleet 10 years ago, the Veil would have demanded you give it to us, or we would have tried to take it. Surin turned on him with shock. Ambassador, it is the truth, Yevil said. We have not been kind to young species. We have used them, controlled them sometimes, destroyed them when they became inconvenient. The humans understood this. They protected themselves. I cannot fault them for that. The chamber Was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. The anger was fading. Reality was setting in, the Keith very Hydrone spoke slowly. If we refuse your alliance, what then? Will you attack us? No, Mensa said, we will return to our silence. We will protect our system and our people, and when they divers come for your worlds, we will watch, just as you were ready to watch. When they came for ours, it was not a threat, it was simply the truth, and everyone in the chamber understood it. General Akono delivered the final blow. Choose quickly, our sensors showed devourer activity in 3 sectors. They are waking up, they are hungry, and they know that something in this galaxy hurt them badly for the first time in 10,000 years. They will want revenge. The only question is whether they find a divided galaxy or a united one. Secretary General Mensa stood. We will give you 3 days to decide. In the meantime, we have work to do. There are more devourers coming, and unlike you, we intend to be ready. The human delegation walked out of the chamber. Behind them, 400 species sat in stunned silence, facing a choice that would determine the fate of the galaxy. 5 years had passed since humanity revealed its hidden fleet. 5 years of preparation, 5 years of alliance building, 5 years of learning to trust species that had once laughed at Earth's empty chair. The combined galactic fleet hung in formation above the devourer home world. 4,000 ships from 12 species united for the first time in galactic history. Vale cruisers flew beside HFY carriers. Sonuran crystal ships shared formation with human destroyers. Old enemies had become allies. Old suspicions had become something almost like friendship. And at the center of the formation, the black ships of Earth, Admiral Wei Chen stood on the observation deck of the UN's Silent Fury. He was the grandson of the old admiral who had first awakened the fleet, and he carried her name with pride. Through the massive windows he could see the devourer home world below. It was a nightmare made solid, a planet covered entirely in living flesh. Mountains of bone rose from seas of organic slime. The air was thick with spores that could devour metal. Billions of devourer creatures crawled across its surface, breeding and growing, preparing for the next great swarm. This was where the monsters came from. This was the source of the hunger that had consumed 100 civilizations, and today humanity would end it. Admiral Chen's communicator beeped. Secretary General Mensa's voice came through from Earth. 40,000 light years away, the Council has approved the final operation. You have command authority. Admiral understood. Madam Secretary, he paused. Any final words for the history books? She laughed softly. Tell them we are sorry. We are late. We had to make sure we were ready. Chen smiled and cut the channel. He opened a fleet-wide broadcast. Every ship in the combined fleet heard his words, human and alien alike. All ships. This is Admiral Chen of the United Nations Stellar Command. For 200 years, humanity watched from the dark. We watched you struggle. We watched you suffer. We watched you die. We are not proud of our silence, but we are proud of what it built. He looked out at the sea of ships around him, species that had once been strangers now standing together. Today we end the devourer thread, not as humans, not as Vale or Kithvari or Surans, but as one galaxy. Fighting together, he took a breath. All ships engage. The combined fleet surged forward like a tide of fire and steel. 4,000 engines burned bright against the darkness. 4,000 ships descended on the Devourer home world with weapons ready and shields raised. The Devourers fought back with everything they had. Bioships rose from the planet's surface by the hundreds. Living missiles launched into space, each one carrying enough organic acid to melt through a cruiser's hull. The sky above the nightmare world became a storm of explosions and death, but the combined fleet did not break. Human tactics guided the battle, but every species contributed. Veil plasma cannons tore through Devourer armor. HFY swarm fighters hunted down enemy missile, sonar and crystal ships created shields of light that protected the fleet vulnerable points. Admiral Chen commanded from the center of the chaos. He had studied the Devourers his entire life, just as his grandmother had. He knew their weaknesses, their patterns, their fears. Squadron 7 target their breeding pits. Squadron 12 destroy those spore launchers. Leave nothing alive that can spread. The battle lasted 3 days. On the first day, the combined fleet destroyed the orbital defenses. Thousands of biohips burned and died, their organic hulls torn apart by weapons from a dozen different species. On the second day, the fleet descended into the atmosphere. They bombed the breeding grounds. They burned the organic cities. They killed the queen creatures that coordinated the swarms. On the third day, Admiral Chen gave the final order: all ships withdraw to safe distance, prepare the purification weapons. The fleet pulled back, and then the weapons fired. Humanity had spent 2 centuries building the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, but they had also built something else, something designed specifically for this moment. Weapons that could sterilize a planet. Weapons that could burn away every trace of Devourer life without destroying the world itself. The Devourer home world burned not with nuclear fire, but with something cleaner, something that targeted organic Devourer tissue and nothing else. The flesh mountains melted, the bone cities crumbled, the organic seas boiled away into nothing. When it was over, the planet was bare. Rock, clean, silent, dead. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Devourer threat was truly ended. Admiral Chen stood on his observation deck and watched the dead world turn slowly. Below, around him, the combined fleet floated in formation, damaged, tired, victorious. His communicator crackled. Ambassador Ivil's voice came through, old and weary, but filled with wonder. It is done, after all these centuries. It is finally done. Yes, Chen said. Devourers are finished. They will never threaten anyone again because of you. Because humanity built in the dark while we congratulated ourselves on our wisdom. There was a long pause. I was wrong about your species, Admiral. We all were. Chen smiled. You were not entirely wrong, Ambassador. We are young. We are often foolish. We make mistakes. He looked at the dead planet below, but we also learn from our mistakes and we protect our friends. 1 year later, the 53rd Galactic Coordination Summit convened on Confluence Prime. Every seat was filled. At the center of the great circular table, in the chair that had stood empty for 2 centuries, sat the human delegation. Secretary General Mensa sat comfortably in humanity's seat. Beside her, General Okonkwo watched the chamber with calm eyes. The fear that had filled this room 5 years ago was gone. In its place was something new: respect, trust, even friendship. Ambassador Yevtal now, old and tired but still serving his people, looked across at Mensa. I must ask a question that has haunted me since your fleet emerged from the dark. Ask if the Devourers had not turned toward Earth, if they had attacked us instead. Would you have helped? The chamber fell silent. Every delegate leaned forward to hear the answer. Mensa was quiet for a long moment, then she smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and sad and very human. We were always going to help, Ambassador. We were just waiting for the right moment. She leaned back in her chair. Humanity does not abandon its neighbors. We just prefer to make an entrance. The chamber laughed. Human and alien alike, delegates from a dozen species united in something that felt almost like hope. High Commander Soren, who had once demanded humanity's disarmament, raised a glass of Valeth wine to Earth, to the silent builders, to the species that taught us all a lesson in patience. The toast echoed around the chamber. Even the Keth, very high drone, who could not drink wine, clicked her mandibles in approval. General Okonkwo leaned close to Secretary General Mensa. They have forgiven us. No, Mensa said softly, they have accepted us. Forgiveness will take longer, but we have time. She looked around the chamber at the species that had once ignored humanity, partners now allies, perhaps someday friends. And far away in the cold dark beyond the stars, the hidden shipyards of humanity continued their work, because the universe was vast and full of dangers yet unknown. Devourers were gone, but other threats would emerge, other enemies would rise. And when they did, Earth would be ready. The galaxy had learned an important lesson over the past 5 years. Silence did not mean weakness, patience did not mean fear, and the species that watched from the dark, that built in secret, that waited for the right moment to act, that species might just save everyone. Admiral Chen returned to the Kuiper Belt. After the victory celebrations ended, he walked through the old shipyards where his grandmother had worked, where generations of humans had sacrificed their lives for a secret they could never share. He stopped at the wall of names, now much longer than it had been in his grandmother's time. So many faces, so many sacrifices, all of them justified now, all of them remembered. We did it, he said to the photographs. We survived, we won, and we made you proud. The photographs did not answer, but Chen felt in some way he could not explain that they were smiling outside in the cold dark where humanity had built its future. New ships were taking shape, bigger, faster, stronger, because the work was never finished. The universe would always have new challenges, new threats, new reasons to be afraid, but humanity was no longer afraid. Humanity was ready, and the galaxy would never forget the day when Earth stopped ignoring the summits and 2,000 ships burst forth from the silent dark.